dialed in to Bucks and Brews, you might hear something you can use. Like tips on your cash or tips on the suds. You're gonna want to use the smarts of these stuff. Cause they know the brews, and they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks. So listen up, cause shit's not funny. And save yourself some beer money. Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and
Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and Brews.
Welcome back to Bucks and Brews. So we're going to take on the debt ceiling tonight, Nick.
Yeah.
We have Mike with us right now, and in about 30 minutes, the professor will be joining us.
Yeah, really. I said we always enjoy Mr. David Siwik joining us.
And I'm going to say this,
yeah,
because I want to promote upcoming episodes.
Please.
February 11th.
Yes.
10 a.m. baseball episode. You were in that text.
You were on that text.
So you better put that in your thing.
10 a.m.?
Yeah.
I should be able to make it.
David and Daniel in studio.
In studio,
Both Siwik boys.
even better.
Is there gonna be room? Because I was gonna come in studio too.
You'll be in studio too. We got room for 5 people. I got
a
plug in for 5.
And I say we have a mic and it'll be fine. Worst case scenario, we throw the thing in the middle and we have a conversation around a round table. And
if our new buddy
Chris.
Chris
I
wants
can
to
ask
join
him,
us.
but
He'll have
that's
to get up
7
at
a.m. for
7
him,
a.m.
So anyway, as
what
David
you
said,
drinking?
welcome back. All right, so currently I am sipping on From Your Mountains to Our Bogs Spruce and Cranberry IPA from Mobcraft Brewery and Jagged Mountain Brewery. Really awesome beer. You get the hint of cranberry on the backside. It's just a light, nice. And then we talked about the spruce, and you get a wilderness flavor. You know, it's really kind of fun. It is an IPA, so you're getting that hoppy aspect of things. But I've never drank a tree, and officially here I am.
After that,
I'm going to do an apple lager with honey and apples, again from the holiday 24 pack. And because tonight's episode is something for us, again, it's just random. It just knew I wanted it for this episode. The episode is called Batshit Crazy Coffee Brown Ale with Lactose from Mobcraft. Really excited for some batshit crazy.
Well, a lot of things are batshit crazy right now. Myself, I am drinking water.
There you go.
It's a water night in honor of the professor, who's also going to drink water. Mike, what do you have? Mike also has water.
There you go.
So 3 waters and a beer.
Yeah, I'll do enough drinking for us all. Don't worry,
sure
boys.
You will.
I got you.
So we're going to take on debt ceiling tonight and why it matters.
And I think that's the thing is most people don't pay attention to it because it's not a daily effect of them, right? I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't think most people understand it and
absolutely
actually get what's going on with this whole thing. So we thought it was important because really in the end it affects our lives more than most people understand.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Of course, I have a lot of facts to back up a lot of things, and I'm probably going to hammer Republicans because this tends to be their hot button issue whenever a Democrat's in charge.
Yeah, because
they want to have the appearance of fiscal responsibility without actually having any fiscal responsibility. So debt ceiling started in 1917.
Yep.
It was a way for Woodrow Wilson to help pay for World War I. Okay. He didn't have to always go to Congress to get money. He could borrow money to pay for the war effort.
Sure.
And it's been raised many times over the years.
Yep.
That's just something that happens. And what people don't understand about the debt ceiling is this is not new spending. This is paying for the bills we've already incurred. So it's literally like your home credit card. You went out and you went to McDonald's and you bought a McChicken for $1. You went to B-Dubs and you bought 10 boneless wings for $10.
Yep.
You know, you went to Meijer and you bought groceries for $150. And at the end of the month, you have to pay these bills.
Yep.
So
You've already bought the goods.
you've already bought whatever you said you were going to buy. You made an agreement
Mhm.
that you would pay for this.
Yep.
So it comes to a point where you have this amount of debt that has hit this, you know, hard stop point.
Yep.
And your options are raise the hard stop point. So
Increase your limit.
which happens on credit cards,
Yep.
you know, or you can default on your loan.
And that's right. Like those are the options.
Yes.
Right. And so just like a credit card, and we'll compare this because I mean basically it's the United States of America's credit card, right?
Yes.
I mean, just with a shit ton of money, you know. And you know, we look at it and okay, the problem that you'll have is it's not a big deal to raise the debt ceiling to get an increase in your credit card
Yes.
until you go purchase.
Right.
Because at that point, now your debt to income is off, right? If you go apply for a house, which this happened to me, this is true things. I'm going to buy, I don't know, going to buy a house and my person goes, hey, your debt to income's off. And I was like, how? I don't have much. And he goes, well, to be honest, you have a $45,000 credit limit. And I said, yeah, but I've never used that credit card. And he's like, but you've been approved to be able to buy that. So you, in theory, have the right. Once you sign in the house, you could go pay $45,000 for stuff and be in debt.
Mhm.
So we look at it as already spent debt. I was like, man, that makes sense. So when you have a limit, that means you're approved. You can guarantee to pay that amount. That's what they figure. You can pay that amount of money back.
Yeah.
So right, I had to go back to the bank and say, hey, I need this credit limit dropped to. Actually, I think we ended up closing the whole card, but because I really just never used the card.
Right.
So, you know, when you have that debt to income problem, that's where you have an issue. So it usually means you're growing and you're doing good, or it means the opposite of, hey, I'm trying to bail myself out by getting more credit.
Well, you know, and of the 4 years Trump was in charge,
Yep.
the debt ceiling got raised 3 times
3 times. And
without too much of an issue.
Yep.
And for 2 of those years, Democrats were in control of the House.
Mhm.
They did not hold the economy hostage to put a stop on raising the debt ceiling.
and people will fight you and here, right?
Yep.
People will fight you because, right? Otherwise the world wouldn't be able to live because you know what? We did get the PPP money, we got the COVID relief money, and that came from Trump, and everybody can say, hey, it started whatever, but really, I mean, he had to approve the longer periods of it. And
Yep.
you know, he did he did what he thought was fine. Again, when you go listen to our old episodes, you'll hear me saying this isn't a great thing. We'll feel it so much longer because where the hell's that money coming from? It's just coming from debt.
Well, and debt ceiling got raised.
Yep.
Last year.
Yep.
I believe it was last year. It was one of the first 2 years that Biden was in charge because this is what, year 3.
It is.
And
Yep, 24 will be the election year.
yeah, so in one of the first 2 years, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, the debt ceiling was raised again.
Yep.
And now it needs to be raised again.
Mhm.
The difference now is that Republicans control the House. And to get this job as Speaker of the House, McCarthy promised all of these fringe, crazy idiots like Gates and Marjorie Taylor Greene pretty much anything they wanted because all he gave a shit about was being Speaker of the House.
Mhm.
So,
Oh man, wouldn't you? I mean, if you're making, what does he make? 150,000 a year,
something like that.
250, like whatever it is. Yeah,
I think they make 170, but
yeah, something.
still.
But
So we're now back to party politics, which does nothing good for the United States of America.
No.
All it does is, you know, add bullshit onto what everybody deals with anyways.
Yep.
You know, so I've had a lot of people asking me, well, why do they need to spend more money? It's not about spending more money. It's about paying the bills we've already incurred.
Right.
So, and they want to tie it to, well, you're going to have to cut spending if you are going to raise the debt ceiling, which, I mean, that's great, but all of the spending has already been approved. It was voted on, it was approved. Now they want to go back and say, yep, just kidding.
Right.
We're not going to pay for those things. And of course, two of the cuts they want to go after are Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security.
And yeah. And right, which is and so I will say, right. I've heard a couple people oh, hey, you've given your whole life into this thing, and you've paid for it, and now they're trying to stop you from getting what you've earned. You've given the government the loan aspect, and they're telling you, hey, you'll get this, but like you didn't pay in what you'll be taking out. I mean, some people will because they'll die, but like, it becomes that average, right? We talked about that on a different episode, right? But
there are people that get more.
There are people that get more. There are people that get less than.
But again, I mean, they tie it to entitlement.
Correct.
But they made entitlement a bad word.
Oh man.
But it's not. You paid into this system. They said you would get this money back at X age.
Right. They raise the age. They raise the age.
Yeah.
They raise the age.
And that's what they continue to do. I sent you a TikTok the other day. France is having a shit fit, and the citizens are revolting against the government because they want to raise mandatory retirement age 2 years. Did you see this?
I did not. You sent it to me?
I did. I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay.
You want to know what their retirement age is right now?
60.
62.
Is it? So
And they want to raise it to 64.
Yep.
Citizens are rioting in the streets because they'll be damned if they have to work 2 more years to get their money.
Sure. And
what's our retirement age, Nick?
In theory, mine is probably 67.
It's 67. What do they want it to be?
72.
They want it to be at least 70, I've heard.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know about you. I'm not working until I'm 70. I'm not fucking working until I'm 67.
I won't be alive.
I might not be either.
Right. Like, I mean,
I better be retired by 60.
Right. And they allow you to take early retirement at 59 and a half with so many fucking penalties. Right. Hey, congrats. You did well. Well, since you did well, you don't need me as much.
Well, and I have to make sure that I don't need Social Security before 65 because I don't want to draw it until I really get to draw it.
Right.
Now,
until you're forced to draw it.
If I'm sick, I'll take it.
Right.
And what is defaulting on the debt mean?
I mean, if you default on your credit card, what does it mean? Right. At first, little.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. By that, I mean, you're still okay. Like your credit score goes from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5. At 5, you're still getting a car loan. You're still able to buy some shit, but not great, right? Like you're gonna have high interest. People aren't gonna be willing to lend to you as well because you've proven you can't make the payment.
And of course, you're getting fees.
Now, in the long period of time, what does it mean? Bankruptcy.
Yeah.
It means you have to have somebody come in and say, hey, we forgive your debt. Hey, you know what? We're doing well. We've made a bunch of money off of other people. We'll just wipe this shit for free. Cool. Again, not hating on Trump because I love to do that, but not as much as some other people, aka you.
Me.
Ask how many times he's gone into bankruptcy.
6.
So, right, like, okay, so the rich people that we know have gone into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
The poor people have gone into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So the difference is guess what? When you went into debt or when you were in bankruptcy, how much did you bankrupt?
I think we wrote about 35,000.
35,000.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how much Trump?
Millions.
Millions.
He bankrupted a casino. How do you do that exactly?
Oh, I watched a TikTok. There was a guy who lost $8 million one day. He was with John Daly and somebody else, and then turned around and won 53 million. And because they asked him to pay 8 million in cash, he turned around and said, "Nope, pay me in fucking cash for my winnings." And they couldn't afford it, so he bankrupted the entire casino for 53 million bucks.
That's hilarious.
That's how you do it. And so
again, anomaly.
But so glad you asked the question.
I'm glad I did too. So, when we're looking at what happens to the United States, one of the things people need to understand, especially if they're not from here, the United States is the global power, okay? And monetarily as well. Everything is based off of a US dollar. Now,
even okay, so I guess I want to dive into that a little bit.
Go ahead.
Everything is based off of our economy, our dollar. Okay.
Mhm.
So when you compare, okay, so we have the Dow, we have the NASDAQ, right?
S&P.
Right. And so China actually has their own stock
Mhm.
exchange as well. You know,
All major countries have a stock exchange for the country.
correct, of of some sort. And so so all of the currency is based off of what it would be valued off of our
Mhm.
currency, right?
And there are countries that their money is worth more than ours.
Shit tons.
The euro has been
I-
higher than the dollar for years,
Right.
and now we're finally catching back up.
Yep, and Canada has always been lower.
Always been lower.
It caught up really close at one point. I don't know what it's, but so it's based off of the dollar,
Yes.
The dollar, right? The United States dollar bill. I was in high school and from the teacher that taught me the most I've ever learned.
Yes.
Do you know the fastest way to bankrupt a nation?
How?
Influx them with shit tons of money, and they will, because then their money becomes useless.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So you go in and just literally give everybody that's poor just so much more fucking money, because then their money becomes nothing.
Mhm.
And so, I thought about that and like, holy shit, if you bring the low up to the high no longer has anything, right?
Yeah.
So, Russia's a prime example of this, right? I mean, if you walk in, so the only people in Russia that have money are the government and of power, right? The rest of them, I mean, they're a communist party. They're told this is how much you get for food. This
Yeah,
is how much you're
They
rationed
literally stand in line for bread.
for everything,
Yeah.
right? You're rationed with your stuff, and people don't believe it because they haven't seen it and they don't care to actually take this in.
It's the politicians there and the oligarchs that have all of the money and all of the power.
Right. So yes, they have $10, but like you can't buy anything with that, right? Like your basic life, but basic, right?
And again, when you look at a country like Russia,
Yeah.
how do they keep citizens in line? They keep them poor.
Yeah, very much.
Poor and educated the way they want them educated.
Very. And and some people it works, right? I'm not gonna lie about the fact there's people who are like, what, this isn't bad. I'm guaranteed food, I'm guaranteed a place to live, I'm guaranteed work, and there's people that are just fine with getting by. Don't get me
there
wrong. It's when
I would say the three of us are not.
right, when you're in America and you have the opportunities we have to make, and that's why again I'm a little different than you guys, because I take it to an extreme aspect of, man, you have every possibility. I mean, literally you have 24 hours in a day. If you're not gonna, I also don't value the health the way some people do. But man, go out and hustle and grind and fucking do everything. And sometimes it takes a little bit to get lucky. But really, I mean, if you can go and sell and do everything, I mean, if you're just busting your ass all day, you're not going to do it off of selling a sub, right?
Mhm.
Now, if you sell a sub and then you open another one, 2 people are selling subs and you're making a profit off of it, and 3 people, then you start hiring people. That's how you have the ability to hire people to go sell subs for you, and you're giving them a little bit. And that's America. You can take the percentage because you gave them a job, right? That's the opportunities that I say that we have, right? You either A, have to find the sucker that's going to work for the price you're willing to pay, or B, again, get lucky and do it. So that, that's kind of where I look at this is, we as a nation, are have promised already so many of these countries, right? When we talk about other countries and their dollar, we've talked about this. We've said, hey, China, we'll buy this much. We've pulled a Walmart. I'll buy shoes from you for the next 20 years. Just keep making them, right?
Right.
We've done this. We've promised it.
So I want to look at some of the consequences
Please.
if we default on our debt.
Yeah.
So of course, it can just start off as a drop in the stock market.
Yeah.
Which normal people may not necessarily care because they may not have enough money to buy stocks. But that causes a ripple effect in this country and in other countries, because that affects our ability to borrow more money and to pay those bills we've already said we will pay.
I guess, can you give an example? If not, I can for sure.
Go ahead.
All right, when you look at your personal money, when you expect that you're going to get a raise.
Mhm.
Okay. And the thing is everybody for estimates say, hey, I'm going to get a 3% raise every year forever. Well, there's a point where a company stops paying you that 3%. You get angry, you get whatever, you stop growing and that type of, oh, I can't keep up with inflation. I'm topped out, blah, blah. Well, your company does it because, hey, I am no longer going to get my value from you any more than what it is. So just like now our thing is we import a shit ton.
Mhm.
So we've promised all the, and so now these companies are going, hey, they're making stupid numbers, 10,000 cars. Well, next year they're going to make 10,300. The next year they're going to make 10,600, yada, yada, yada. Well, so they're expecting a 3% raise. Now we've done this and we can't pay and we can't guarantee, oh shit, we're not making the extra 300 we thought we were going to make for profit. So the countries are doing this. And so you were sitting here going, oh, all right, back it up. Now we're not making the money we thought we were going to make because we're not selling what we thought our projected amounts would be.
Well, and not only that, do we really want to even fulfill the 10,000 we were going to fulfill because they stopped paying on it?
Correct.
So maybe we just don't want to give you any fucking cars and you can just kick rocks.
Right.
Higher interest rates for borrowers. Nick,
We're seeing it.
if you went to buy a house right now, what's your percentage rate?
Mine, I closed one for 6.8. A friend of mine closed one at 8.1.
So
High. It's the lowest I've heard and the highest I've heard, I guess, in theory.
because I love to bash Reagan, let's go for a minute. Do you know what home mortgage rates were in, let's say, approximately 1981?
80.
Just give me a ballpark.
I don't remember the year. I'm going to say 14.
I'm going to say 19.
Okay. So yeah.
Would you pay 19% for a house?
Yes.
Why?
Because I would have bought it really cheap.
Okay.
So it's not.
Would you buy?
Would I buy houses right
Would
now?
you buy my house at $130,000
No.
at 19%?
If you use the number of 200, which is what I would assume your house is worth, I don't know. No, my answer is no, right? If I went to buy a normal house at the prices they're asking right now for 19%, the answer is no. If I'm
I love that people come on here and
Every
talk
time.
about the
every time-
evolution of beard growth, because you go from me with a little bit to Mike with a little bit more to Nick with this long thing.
yeah,
I think it might
thank,
get
you,
trimmed today.
thank you, Polar Knights. I do appreciate those comments.
we do love them.
No, but in 1981, were people not buying houses because it was 19%?
No, they were.
Everybody was buying a house
Right.
because they made enough money
Mhm.
to afford 19%. They didn't care.
Right. And we talked about it. Like it's one of my most annoying things. A truck right now. My 1981, look it up. 'Cause I think it was 90s. The truck was 10,000. So back then a truck would have been what, $6,000,
Maybe.
right? Maybe.
My mother bought her pickup, which was rear wheel drive, in 1992.
Yep.
It was $13,000.
Brand new.
Brand new,
Right, so
off the
um,
lot. And right now you're buying one, if you're lucky, for 60.
oh yeah, right. So like that just goes to tell you. So I'm not paying 19% on the prices we have now because prices are inflated.
Well, and again, in 1972, we bought that house in Plainwell. And I think it was like $30,000.
Yep.
You know, it was some ungodly low number. And
$8,434.
for a truck in 1981.
Yep.
Yeah.
And 4-wheel drive was nine grand. So
Yep.
I was pretty
You know, a regular size, you know, even like a large single family home, probably in 81 was $20,000 at the most.
a large what? I'm sorry.
A larger single family home.
Oh, sure. Yep. Oh, it's I mean, you know,
Look at 19% on that. Is it? I mean, it was still a decent amount of money for, you know, that amount, but
It was.
given the fact that relative to what it is now, I mean, minimum wage was, you know, significantly higher compared to what it is now relative to total cost for things.
so
Well, and you know, you get the boomers, which I rail on a lot, that say, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I did it. You did it, but the percentage of pay you were taking home and the relative cost of things were so much cheaper now than what it is now. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked on our last episode about, you know, millennials not having kids. They don't have kids because they can't afford fucking kids.
right.
They can't move out of their parents usually until they're in their late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And so, right, I go back to the point of what you're willing to pay for something and what it's actually worth. So now you're going to make things worth less, right? Because people can't afford to pay it. So you said, right, interest rates will go up, and we've already seen that.
Well, and the interest rates for mortgages went up to control inflation, but this is for any borrower. So yeah, cars have gone up a tiny percentage,
Sure,
but they're going to go up a lot.
Oh man, back when I actually financed a car, which people don't know about me, I got it for 0.9%. It wasn't even 1%. So
Mine was 2.85,
right.
I want to say.
I think now they're at 3-4.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
but they're going to be up at 5 or 6.
Oh yeah,
because they have to.
And I when you talk to a financial person, an accountant specifically type thing, do you know what everybody calls a CD?
What?
A CD is a certificate of depreciation.
Is that what they call it?
That's the joke of it, right?
Okay.
Because I mean, you're not making any money. It's funny because I got excited and I get excited. Hey, I'm getting 4% on a CD. Inflation's at 7 to actually, I think, what did we recorded that for our inflation? It was 11% or something like that.
It was high for a while. I think it's down around 6.5% right now.
Sure. But so, I mean, technically a CD will never out earn inflation.
No.
So it's a certificate of depreciation.
It's the same thing with savings accounts. Savings account rates go up when mortgage rates go up because they can give you more money to park your money there so they can loan out more money.
Oh, yeah.
But when interest rates drop, so do the rates on savings accounts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but
or checking.
We'll say so no matter how much you think you're doing well, hey, I'm making a percentage, you're not outbeating what you need to make, right? It's just a more secure way to ride the lows out and then get to your highs. So
one of the things I like looking at is, because I hate Reagan, I wanted to know how many times the Democrats have held the debt ceiling hostage.
Sure.
So actually, they can trace it to 3 times. 81.
Okay.
84.
Okay.
87.
All before I was born.
All under the Reagan.
All during Reagan's presidency.
Was it really?
But do you want to know how they held it for hostage? For a couple 3 days, they postponed voting on things. Or they voted no for 2 to 3 days.
Sure. Not
weeks and months like what goes on now.
Well,
at the point where the government gets shut down.
Well, yeah, and that's okay. So like I remember, because I was young and I don't love to get into politics. I mean, I hate hanging out with you because it's starting to bring me there.
It does.
Which is annoying because I don't love fighting about politics. One, probably because I don't care to learn the education of it and dive into. I do it for these episodes. I do it for stuff. But I will say the one thing that pissed me off was when Obama was in, right? I mean, we closed the government down because they went on strike because they're not voting because, oh, hey, we're not getting our way. And I was like, fuck, if I didn't get my way, I would have been fired out of my, oh man, oh, that's, that's the stuff that gets me, right? Hey, we're going on strike. We're not opening up any of this. And it's like, man, if I could act like a child and still get my paycheck, I'd do it all day, every day.
That would have been John Boehner, Speaker of the House at that point.
Say, right?
I love how I just know that.
Yeah. But
you don't see the hate.
So then, then that starts me trying to figure out how, right? Because I'm all about how to beat people. And I'm a fan of voting. I've never missed a vote. I never will miss a vote, right? Because I find it to be one of the only things I can do with my power, right? And then we start a podcast so our voice can get heard and hopefully do one thing.
Well, and one of the things they're talking about is if extraordinary measures are taken, they can basically push off the worst of this until June. So if the debt limit is raised before the Treasury runs out of cash, the financial markets will still suffer because of the Are you okay?
Unless you're good.
Okay. Because of the I lost my train of thought.
Sorry. Say
The
forgive.
financial markets will still suffer because of the consequences of delaying votes or voting no or playing partisan politics here.
And okay, so I hope everybody's understanding what you're saying. And I just put it into dumb people terms.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, kind of a quick example. A quick example would be, should I lend David $10? Will he pay me back?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, should I lend David $10?
Never.
Okay, right. So never. I personally will say yes. Okay. So now we have two people. Well, I mean, God, there's one person that doesn't believe in you. It's going to be really hard for me to want to lend to you.
Mhm.
And so now if you have these nations that go, well, 50% of the fucking people wouldn't lend to the US, 50% of the people say, yeah, go for it. I mean, you got to ask yourself, what side do I, and if you're the conservative person, you're like, I'm not going to take the risk. You're not worth the risk. You're not worth that. You know what? We believe in you. We trust you. We're going to go for it. You always want to believe in the but you have that, and governments do that. Like other countries, other nations. Man, I'm not guaranteed I'm going to get my money, but I'm gonna trust you on that, right? So that's exactly what you're saying, just in dumb people terms, right? I mean,
So I'd like to welcome now one of
Please.
our favorite contributors, the professor, Mr. Siwik there. We have been
Well-
talking for about 30 minutes before you joined on
Okay.
debt ceiling stuff. So what are you drinking, my friend?
Uh, I'm almost out.
wow.
Lime flavored sparkling water.
It's still water.
It is
Yeah.
still water.
Mike and I are also drinking water tonight.
That is
Okay.
not City of Lansing.
It's not City of Lansing.
It
Tap
isn't city. I know it's
Are
weird.
you doing okay?
I am. I'm doing
Good.
great.
So you must be in a really good
He
mood.
needed
like-
he needed a little bit of sugar for his teaching his classes.
yeah,
Well, this isn't even sugar. It's just
just
carbonated
flavored
water with like
yeah.
a tiny bit of lime in it. So
One of the bubbles in his mouth. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, he just
Okay.
wanted some flavor.
yeah. So yeah. Well, what did I come in the middle of?
No, just kind of
what am I wading into? Or
We were
diving
just kind of describing what the debt ceiling is and why people should care about it and what happens if we default.
Yep.
and why
And then
why
the
it even
last
exists?
Yes.
yeah, and saying the last thing we were just talking about were if it doesn't happen, what are the negatives? So
Yeah.
we talked about raising interest rates,
Yep.
and we talked about
Stock market crashing.
Yeah, stocks taking the hit, and then other countries and nations having the impact of that they're kind of having. So we haven't
I think
gotten
it's
into too
important
much
to
of it.
realize Dave was using a lot of like the big financial terms, and Nick was trying to make it for the everyman.
Yeah, let's say.
Which that does tend to happen. I do talk over people sometimes.
Well, and because I mean, it happens to me quite often, right? Like, we talked about it, reading aspect.
Yeah.
I want small words. I want to put it to me straight, right? Like, well, if we do like straight,
Yep.
yes or no.
That's why we're a good team here, because
believe
I
so.
can talk intelligently about it and you can dumb it down for everybody.
Yeah.
Not that you're not intelligent, but you can dumb it down for people where sometimes I just can't.
Right. Because like, all right, you should get this, you should understand this. And I'm like, nope, you're up here. Say,
Well, I came in the middle of what sounded like a really good explanation of bond ratings and risk and why that's actually like important. Because yes, if the US defaults on its debt, if it's a true default, I mean a true default, we're in deep doo-doo. To use a very unacademic term, we're in trouble. I mean, because the United States has, from its inception, been a nation in debt. The U.S. borrowed a bunch of money from the Netherlands and the French and others to fight the War of Independence. I mean,
Yep.
so we're a nation born in debt. And you know what? Every modern nation on earth has a debt story, and many of them multiple. The thing that makes the United States unique is, and this is something that I really try to explain to my students now more than I did before, is people will tell you Uncle Sam's credit card, this and that. It is absolutely not anything remotely remarkably close to you having a credit card in your wallet for one huge, gigantic fundamental reason, because you cannot put your fingers on your credit card and immediately, every time you run out of money, load that balance back up without moving that money from another bank account. The federal government can. And the reason why it can is because of faith in its ability to pay its debt, because people think the government just prints money. It's not actually what happens. So Nick, the scenario you're talking about has a technical element to it. It's the federal government raises money by issuing bonds, like all municipalities do, right? These are federal bonds. It's a promise. It's like a savings bond. But the actual, the meat and potatoes of this, if you will, are what are called T notes, the treasury notes. And Dave, I don't know if you got into this or not, but
I have not gotten into
No,
T-notes
please.
yet.
it's so basically the Federal Reserve. There are two players here. You have the Treasury Department and you have the Federal Reserve. And this is like really, really important understanding how the US debt works and why there is a debt ceiling to begin with, let alone what it is. So the Federal Reserve is a bank. Think of it as a bank that Congress chartered 100 and some years ago, 1913. And it's a bank that's really unique because it's a bank that exists on cash that it can order. Doesn't have to get me to deposit money into the bank account before it can loan you that money back and charge you interest on it. That's not how the Federal Reserve works, although it does that. And the Federal Reserve borrows money from other entities, sort of, because the Treasury Department is the one that has to handle the debt. So what happens is the T-note is the bond that the US federal government issues. It's how it sells its debt. And it's debt for sale. It's bid. That's how the interest rates in the United States are set. The Federal Reserve has a, they call it the bid window opening, and there are a handful of banks. It varies. I think there's like a list of 30 or something that they have to choose from. I think it's 6 on that list. Those bankers get to submit bids as to what the interest rate should be. And the Federal Reserve then selects I think it's the highest, I would think, or the lowest, one or the other, but they select whatever data extreme point they're looking for, or extreme data point they're looking for, and then that's the interest rate. So what happens is that this is where the debt ceiling comes in. Because the Treasury Department is a federal agency and the Federal Reserve is not a federal agency, it is a bank. The Treasury is actually who is responsible for making the money. The Federal Reserve is responsible for distributing it. And that's like a really important distinction because the Federal Reserve is the bank then that controls the currency through interest rates, but then the Treasury Department has to actually issue the checks. So basically the United States government is able to draw upon a bank by which it can authorize money to be printed to borrow against. That's how it works. Your credit card doesn't work that way. If you try it, you're going to find out quickly that it doesn't. Neither does your mortgage or any other loan you take out. Not your involvement in it. Loans are sold. And when a bank sells its mortgages, sometimes it actually sells them to a corporation the federal government started. Nick, you know all about this. But the my point is
JP Morgan might own a few of mine.
Yeah, so Congress has to authorize then the Treasury Department to borrow money. And people, for political reasons, Congress for years has played around with this as a political tool. It's only politics. This is an entirely invented American problem in so much as the debt ceiling limit being a political item that has to be debated every year. Theoretically, any country with a similar financial system as ours, where the government borrows money on it, is going to run into a debt situation. But because the US can print its money, it'll never, ever, 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 ever run into Greece. Unless, guess what? We default on the debt.
Yep.
Because if that happens, the money isn't worth anything anymore. Now, the promise to pay American debt back is why the dollar's worth something. It's not worth something because you can get gold for it. It hasn't been that way in a long time.
Right.
So once that
Well,
that doesn't get paid back, you're in trouble.
One of the things you just said there hits it on the head. Our money used to be backed by gold or silver, and now it's not.
Correct.
It's just backed by our guarantee that we will honor it.
It's our word, right?
A little more than that. I mean, it is our word, but our word is possible primarily because oil and other world commodities are still traded in US dollars, actually including gold. People sometimes call it the oil dollar.
Sure.
And the Canadian dollar is the same way, and so is the British pound. They're all considered reserve currencies to some extent, primarily for that reason. They're very stable because they have the reality of either being the sources of a commodity traded, or in the case of the United States, both the source and the dollar figure it's traded in.
Mhm.
But again, that's all dependent upon the faith of credit of the United States. So the only last thing I'll say about this, I'll shut up, I promise, for now, is the debt ceiling then is essentially Congress arguing about a bill that's come due long after they authorized the spending. So this is where the analogy of a situation you might get in actually does come in. This truly is a husband and wife going to the store, they get the credit card out and they go crazy on a new furniture set and a new TV and all that good stuff. And then 6 months later, oh my God, how the hell do we owe $6,000 to MasterCard? And then they're going to argue about whether or not they're going to pay it, even though they're sitting on the couch they just bought with the credit card. With the argument, that's kind of what Congress is doing right now. This is spending that was authorized off a prior budget.
Yep.
Now they're going to argue about paying the bill when it comes due. Okay.
And I'm gonna say we mentioned that kind of earlier was right. It's already been spent.
Yeah.
And now you're fighting whether we can spend it or not. And that separates successful investors from non-successful investors, right?
Well, I do want to talk about borrowing for a second, because
Sure.
I think this is a distinction that people may not realize if they haven't gone through, say, bankruptcy. Do you know 6 months post bankruptcy being discharged, you get credit card offers?
Of course,
Why?
because they know that you can't declare bankruptcy for however long.
7 years.
7 years, yeah. I say, of course they will.
And
They
what
know
did
that
they-
you're a spender.
And they know that if you take that card
Yeah.
and you do what you just did,
Yeah.
you're on the hook for 7 years of
7 years.
payments,
7 years,
because
guaranteed.
there's nothing else you can do.
Yep.
You know, and looking at us as a country, are we a good gamble? Yeah, we've always been a good gamble. We've always paid the bill.
Yep.
Now, do we have more debt than we need to have? Of course we do. But I mean, that's how average citizens live nowadays anyways. Do I have average debt? Hell no. I don't have average debt. I have well below average debt because I don't take on debt.
Well, I mean, I think you say,
Look up average.
yeah.
I know probably for a fact. David, do you feel you have average debt or below average debt?
Oh, below average. I don't have credit cards or a car payment. I have a mortgage and student loan balance. That's it.
Mike?
Probably right at average or just below. I mean, my biggest one right now, of course, is my mortgage, and a lot of it for me is just I haven't paid as long on it as other people have, so I owe more on it.
What's average debt,
So
Nick?
the average American. So sorry, I just want to be clear on this. The
Yeah.
average American holds a debt balance of $96,371, according to 2021 Experian data. The
And I'm
latest
definitely
payroll,
below
96,000?
average, 'cause
96,000. That's up 3.9% from 2020. With the 92,701, largely due to the rising balance of mortgage and auto loans.
I'm below.
You
Yeah.
owe more than that on your house.
No, I do not.
Really?
I owe less than $90,000.
Good for you.
I'm below that. And yeah, the property values are So personal debt, if a lot of it is sitting in mortgage debt, theoretically, if property values aren't going down, that's,
Well-
but a lot of it isn't. It's in credit card debt, of course.
And I want to be, I guess I want to be kind of clear on this because I don't know the answer. But it says the average American holds. There's, I mean, there's usually 2 people, so I don't know if that's 180, right? Let's just, or well, 190, because 95,000 a piece. So I'm not sure if that's how, like, one household 95 or 190,000 debt per person, right? Like, or
Probably is.
per couple.
I bet it is.
And I guess I would bet that it is too.
Well, I would say you have more debt because you have
Oh, I have-
many houses.
If shit tons more debt than
But out of the 4 of us here, 2 of us have credit cards,
very much.
2 of us do not.
Yep.
I don't count my credit card debt as debt because I pay it off every month.
Yours, it's funny because yours is debt for 30,
It's technically
30
debt.
Yours is 30 days.
Correct.
And then you're
Depends
clean
on
for-
when you look at his books.
Exactly. You're clean for a day. And
When
then
was the
you're-
bill paid?
and you're in debt again.
Technically, I'm not even clear for a day because the bill comes due on, say, the 9th,
Mhm.
but the next one doesn't close until the 12th, the next billing cycle.
Okay.
So there's still, an overlap there of,
Yeah, and
not-
unless you're paying the whole balance off, you're always.
even when you're
having-
paying the whole balance
Yeah,
off, you could
yeah,
still be
that's-
accruing charges for the next bill.
Sure. Okay. So,
And I mean, I do, I pay my balances off in full.
Yep.
So I never count that towards my debt because to me, it's not debt.
correct.
I pay it all off.
you right, and that's the responsible way to do a credit
Correct.
card. That's the one thing that might be why I get a credit card, because I will be that guy who pays us off, just gets the value of the points. That's the
Yeah,
only
and that's what I do.
thing. Right. I just went and I sat with Chase because that is my goal this year, is to get one. Chase is offering 2% back on everything. And if I spend 10,000 in the first 3 months, I get $1,000. And if I spend over 5,000 per transaction, it's actually 2.5% back. So literally, if I walk into a flip and I know I'm getting flooring, lights, paint, blah, 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 boom, there it is. I'm getting 2.5% back. So I'm waiting for my next flip. I'll open the credit card and then go on a spending spree and then literally just pay it off within the time frame.
Well, again, we have equated the debt ceiling to credit cards, and David makes a great distinction here. It technically is not, because we can't arbitrarily raise our limit.
Right. So you have to call, and that's what we talked about when we described it. We described it credit card wise, but we said, hey, you have to go to a bank and say, hey, can I increase my limit? And we said, when you increase your limit, the negatives that we have is that it impacts your debt to income ratio, right? And so you won't get approved for other things, which is what's happening at the debt income. Hey, can I trust that you'll pay above this? Like, I have you approved for this amount of money. Don't know if you're making more money to approve this. So that's the whole point of it.
And-
Is
Yeah, absolutely. And that add-on crazy element kind of compared to the way all of us do our finances, because we have to, and the federal government has a different set of rules, is
the federal government does finances?
Yeah, so not only does the federal government have to go through the legislative process of raising the debt ceiling, right? But then it also has another process to go through of actually acquiring the cash by issuing the debt.
Mhm.
So that, that Congress says, yep, you can raise the debt ceiling. Great. The bond certificates, they're back. Whatever the interest rate is, great. It's been set. Boom, there's the notes. We can start doing it again. But then they have to actually sell them. That's where the cash literally comes in. And in that aspect, what American debt is really more comparable than a credit card is stock in a publicly traded corporation. Because a publicly traded corporation issues stock, it's debt. It's them acquiring debt. That's how they raise money when they don't want to go to a bank or can, or whatever reason. When they don't go to a bank to borrow money, they can raise cash by issuing stock. And so they do. And they've expanded the amount of people then that they have to pay dividends to.
Not all pay dividends, but yeah.
But that's how, so for the federal government, for the purposes of looking at what is their debt compared to, that like we might be able to think of, it's not comparable to anything, but it's more comparable to the way a private corporation issues stock than it is our credit card bill, much more.
Sure. And that's a great way to look at it. I think it's just very hard because, most people, they look at stocks just as, hey, my money goes in and goes up or down. They don't realize that, hey, Tesla, when I give them money, they're opening a plant. Amazon, they're opening a plant. Instead of going to a bank, they just go to, we talk about it all the time. They syndicate the money and say, hey, if you want to throw in money, we'll just, yep. And if it goes up, you get paid. If it goes down, sucks to suck.
Yeah.
But here and so you're betting on that company that, hey, yes, you're going to keep growing. You're going to do this. And so I just think that most people, when I talk to them, hey, what is a stock? Oh, it's just, you put it in the market and it gains you money over time. No, but what is it? No, it's really, you're lending to that specific company. Let's be very clear about that.
And you own a little piece of that company.
Right.
Exactly.
And you have zero rights unless, so.
You have voting rights, kind of like you do
And
in the
that
nation.
depends. That depends on how many shares you own, what are the
Right.
governance laws of that corporation, and all of that has, a regulatory component too, that usually dependent upon the size of the corporation, how much money they have. But yeah, so that thing about the federal government that is, again, this goes back to this idea that because they print their own money or can produce it, let's just say that, and I had messaged Dave that I might get to talk about modern economic, or what's it called? Modern monetary theory.
Yeah, I did want you to get into this.
So modern monetary theory until a year ago would have been all the rage, depending on which university economics department you were in, although it never quite caught on to everybody. Now, the reason why I said up to a year ago is because inflation seems to have, and I'm not an economist, I'm a historian. The two are not the same thing, but let's just say this. One of the fundamental aspects of modern monetary theory is that debt is not a bad thing. It's not actually what causes inflation unless it's so far out of whack to what the country's overall economic value is. So modern monetary theory, the simplest way I can explain it is, and it was actually a stock broker on Wall Street that came up with this. The theory behind this is really best explained by the way everybody else thinks of money. So monetary theory it's the theory of money that's not backed by gold or silver in this case. And most conventional economics tells you that money is worth, cash money that's not backed by gold or silver has a value because I can go into a store and get something with it. It's faith, right? Dave, you mentioned that a few minutes ago.
Mhm.
So the faith of an economy taking that dollar is what makes it valuable. And therefore, that dollar may not be worth gold nuggets anymore, but it is actually worth something because I can get a physical object. I can buy these headphones. If I hand somebody $150 bills, he will give me this in return. So I get stuff with it. And in that aspect, the money is still being, it's still something of value, of good. Modern monetary theory says, actually think of money as having a reverse association with the goods and services of the economy. The money is applied to the service to make it worth something, not the other way around. Okay, in other words, instead of the money being worth something because I get the service for it, I've made the service worth something by making it payable to acquire. So basically, modern monetary theory is that a service-oriented economy is valued differently than a goods-oriented or a manufacturer-oriented economy. And because of that, the money is actually something that you have to essentially invent to entice people to produce the service because you're applying a tangible item at that point to something that's otherwise doesn't have a tangible value to it. That's it. Now, the reason why this was a big deal is because modern monetary theorists, like, I'm gonna hold my book up, Stephanie Kelton. She is a professor of economics at Harvard. She worked in the Obama administration. Kelton was one of the biggest proponents of the theory, and half of her book right here talks all about why. The book, by the way, is called The Deficit Myth, for those of you that are listening and not viewing. The author is Stephanie Kelton. Her last name is Kelton. And Kelton was an economic advisor to the Obama administration. She was an econ prof at Harvard. And half her book talks about why debt isn't even it's a non-issue unless it ever got the currency so devalued that it truly was worthless. But she thought that debt would have to so far and away exceed anything the United States has ever had to get to that point that it wasn't feasible to happen. But she also puts an argument in there on a less extreme bit that even inflation isn't likely to happen under high levels of debt in a service-oriented economy, because you're always able to sort of manipulate what the service is worth by you affixing the value to it through the dollar. Well, hey, the last year, I mean, inflation was double digits last year. So now it's looking like, okay, maybe that's wrong, actually. Maybe the government did actually spend too much money and it had an impact on the economy a lot more than Kelton would have thought. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm a historian, but I'm fascinated by this theory.
Sure. So, we love this topic. One thing that got us heated in the beginning, so I'd like to get to the heated section of this. And I'd like to more ask questions than answer things. All right. So to me, it's really messed up, the fact that you mentioned that we have until June to fix this, and we're going to have issues all the way up until then. I mean, we're worrying about 6 months from now. Like, we're actually worried.
Well, we're worrying about 5 months from now.
Is it 5 months?
Yeah.
Sure. So we're worried about 5 months because that's how long we think. And now, I guess, can you tell me what's happening, why it's not approved, and what we're kind of going through with why we're talking about this debt ceiling? Because normally we didn't talk about it for the past. We talked about it.
We didn't talk about it last year.
We didn't talk about it last year. We didn't talk about it
The year before.
the Trump thing.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Trump administration doing it. We haven't talked about it as a country since Obama.
Right. But so I guess why is it important right now? I mean, we just talked about why it's important, but what's happening that's making it so it's not just a guarantee?
I'm going to throw in my 2 cents and bash Republicans like I like to do, and
Please.
And then I'll hear the professor's answers. So, Kevin McCarthy, to get enough votes to become Speaker of the House, promised a bunch of fringe, insane people that he would push their agenda. Okay. And for example, they can hold the debt ceiling hostage to cut spending in areas they don't like spending, like Medicare or Social Security. They can, one of the things we talked about on our free floating hostility episode of, their newest idea is, let's get rid of all taxes except for a 30% sales tax, which only hurts poor people, which seems to be the Republican agenda, is to fuck poor people, which irritates me because they're poor.
Let's dumb it down.
Go ahead.
How does it only affect poor people, David?
It mostly affects poor people because they are the people that are spending money to move the economy. So I'm Elon Musk.
Yep.
I'm spending money, normally because I'm buying companies and shit.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my money is going to go into a bank or the stock market or some kind of investment tool to make me more money.
Sure.
Okay. Me as who I am, I take, let's say, 15% of what I make and I put it into investments because I want to retire by the time I'm 60.
Yep. And how much is he taking? 90?
Maybe.
Sure.
Probably.
Let's just say, I mean, right? So
Yeah.
He's investing 90% of his money. You're investing 15.
Right. And now you look at a poor person, some of the people we've had on for debt episodes. Now, I wouldn't say, necessarily Vanessa, because Vanessa's, holding her own. But thinking of somebody specifically, you know, who was a friend of mine that called me last night, they're putting nothing in investments because they have no money. All of their money goes to pay for housing and food and the normal stuff that people buy.
They're spending all of it. And
Correct.
yeah,
And
so
okay,
that short of it is a poor person spends most of his income. So taxing
on
sales is
goods.
taxing spending. So you're taxing most of his income at a very high rate compared to Elon Musk will never buy in his entire life anywhere near the amount of consumer goods measured as overall value to the economy that just the people in my neighborhood will buy.
right.
Not even close. So even if he did spend all of his income and we could tax that, it wouldn't matter. It's never going to come anywhere near the level that we could get if we had an income tax that disproportionately taxed him instead of me.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing to me is, and I got into it because, all right, so you're making $1 million a year. Okay. I mean, there's people that do it. There's plenty of people that make $1 million a year. Okay. We wrote it down. The average weekly budget for thrift buying of groceries for a traditional family is $235 per week. Okay. So let's just that's thrift buying. So I mean,
And you figure traditional families like 3 1/4 lives or 3 1/3 lives, it's somewhere in that
yeah,
range.
four people, right? Now if we're doing state taxes 6%, we talked about for us and our but adding 30% tax onto that. So we're adding an $84 tax onto that. Now for you, $84, and for me, $84 is, I mean, that's a shit ton more money.
Yeah.
Now if you're okay, sure. Now you're Elon Musk and you're buying fucking ribeyes and that's what you're eating per week. Granted, you have a chef that's making it, but the fact is like, so yours is $500. Okay. Now you've spent $200 in taxes versus the $100 in tax. You're making $1 million. You're making 30,000, right? The average person is making $39,000 a year or something like that. So like you're getting taxed on things that you buy, and the poor people are only buying I mean, they're not only buying, but like they're buying things to get through their life, cars, food, stuff like that. Now the rich people,
Goods and services.
correct, good, rich people, they're investing, they're buying businesses, they're doing, and they don't want to tax any of that, right? They want Gentex Corporation to be tax free.
Yes.
They want to treat them as a church. So
I mean, they really do.
that's exactly it.
They don't want an estate tax anymore. Not because when I die, my family will get, $500,000, but because when Elon Musk dies, his family will get 18 billion or whatever.
Yep. So, right, they're holding that over the head right now because they want to get rid of Social Security.
Mhm.
They want to get rid of
Medicaid, Medicare.
Medicare, and they want to
Yeah.
get rid of the IRS.
Yes.
What you have with the Republican Party is, and this is just a statement of fact, it's not an opinion, is a completely discombobulated smorgasbord of, well, to quote and cite the work of a sociologist out in California. His name is Todd Gitlin. It's the competing libertarians that are completely at odds with one another, the social libertarians and the economic libertarians. And right now, the Republican Party has people that think they can be both. And the very nature of economic libertarianism runs completely counter to a society that also purports to structure itself on Christian ethics, completely contradictory to one another, but yet they're trying to make it work. Okay. But it's completely false too, because the Republican Party spends money like there's absolutely no tomorrow. They're anything but the party of small government at any level, if they're in state, local, or federal. They never have been. Ronald Reagan was the 20th century president that absolutely exploded the debt every bit as much as FDR did, and that wasn't even during World War. And he was a Republican. Republicans just spend money on different stuff. They know that small government is a term that people that they think are stupid will swallow in some type of dog whistle, secret speak of those people versus you. But actually, most people aren't stupid. And when they look at their record when they're in power, they're like, wow, these guys are small government, but holy moly, they spend money like there's no tomorrow. So that whole libertarian part of it then just becomes false. And to me, the debt ceiling thing is like the ultimate example of this. Most of the extra debt the US has taken on over the last 5, 6, 10 years happened, split very evenly between Obama and Trump. Okay, they both were administrations that signed budgets that Congresses that more than they weren't were actually majority Republicans. And this is the money then that now has come due, and they're gonna, I don't know, think it's like 1995 again. The first time the Republicans pulled this off, tried to do this, was in 1995. And that time it wasn't, they weren't going to borrow more money. They just weren't going to do anything. They shut the government down. They couldn't get a budget agreed to. And that's happened since then. I suspect what's going to happen this time is, I think that they're going to probably push it even closer than they did when Moody's, an investment firm, did actually downgrade American bond about 15 years ago, I think it was. Or 10 years ago. I could see that happening again, then pushing it right up to the limit. The last time they did that, Congress passed a law that theoretically may allow the Treasury to mint a coin that has a face value of however much money they need to borrow and deposit that coin into the appropriate Treasury account then that can issue bonds off of it. And I kid you not, that is one possibility. If it ever got down to that the Treasury Department has said that they can do based on a law that Congress passed or modified a few years ago. Right now, they're taking bills that they would normally pay now that are due in October, and they're not going to pay them right now. They're going to pay the bills that are normally due in May instead, and hope to God they've got the money in the accounts by then.
Well, I want to hit on two things that I'm thinking of here. So the people that David is describing here as social and economic libertarians are the same people that think fascists and communists are the same fucking thing, even though they're completely different ideologies.
Yeah, one tried killing the other.
Correct. And if you don't know what we're talking about, the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and thought that the entire population of Jews in the world were communists that wanted
Yes.
to kill everybody else. I mean, that's what they were. Yeah.
Well, and I love to rail on Reagan here because again, I think the biggest injustice done was changing the tax code, early in his presidency, because his corporate overlords did not like if you made over $10 million, you got taxed at 95% of everything over it, which that allowed this nation to actually prosper. We talked about it before David came on. Interest rates in 1981 were about 19% to get a mortgage. But that wasn't an issue for workers in 1981 because they were making enough money at that time, even if they were making, let's say, $5 an hour, they were making enough money to cover that mortgage, cover a vehicle, which you looked up, a brand new truck with 4-wheel drive was $9,000.
Right.
A house, an average house was $35,000.
Which, and those prices had doubled in the previous, like 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
That was the last time you had high inflation. But yes, that is exactly what happened, Dave, is the wage lag back then. I think it just looks like it was truly a lag back then. I say that because wages went up a lot last year, average around the country more than they had in like 40 years. And in the 70s, when you had high inflation, then the lag, I think, was longer. But back then, you also, obviously, it wasn't that long because eventually the wages did catch up. And remember, you still had organized labor in this country back then in the private sector, and they had power to get pay raises and get them quick. there are hardly any unions left in this country, and virtually none in the private sector, except for a few industries like aerospace and auto production. But all of the, although again, over the last year, this has actually reversed itself in a trend and going another way it hasn't in 40 years. But still, 40 years ago, a lot of people were working in union environments. And so when contracts came up for renegotiation, they got these big pay raises. And actually, there's an economic argument that says, well, that prolongs inflation. But then on the other hand, you look at what happened in that really bad inflationary period, the wages caught up and eventually energy prices plummeted. That's actually what caused inflation to begin with back then. That was the root cause of it. Kind of like now, where the root cause of this inflation is mostly commodity price fluctuation. Everything balanced out. I suspect that's what's going to happen this time. I don't know how long it'll take. I mean, that you had high inflation from the like 1973, 1974, right on through about 83 or 84. So you had 10 years then of high inflation. So that brand new pickup truck in 1981, that was $9 grand. In 1971, that thing was like 5 or 6.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and one of the things I was watching on TikTok yesterday was about your favorite Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, they say the CEO is the most important person in the company. He's the one that runs the company. He's the one that makes every decision. Elon Musk is currently the CEO of 4 companies.
Yes.
So if he's so damn important, how is he that important to 4 companies when he has to divide his time up between 4 different companies?
Yep.
And
he's not sleeping.
No, he absolutely is
Right.
sleeping. Now, he might be an odd person that only needs 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night.
Right.
But I mean, let's take 16 hours because that's normal 8 hours, and you split it up by 4. You can devote 4 hours a day to one company. Let's say he sleeps a lot, or doesn't sleep a lot. He gets 4 hours a night.
Even if
You can give 5 hours to one company per day.
right. I mean, even it's exactly 5 hours per day per company.
Yeah.
And
5 times 5 is 25. That's 25 hours a week.
Yep. And
He's making millions of dollars every year to be the CEO of those 4 companies.
well,
Each company.
yeah. Twitter was bought, right? I mean, so
Yeah, he bought it. And yeah, so it destroys, Dave, what you're doing is to throw my snooty academic terminology in,
Please
is
do.
you have just deconstructed the argument for meritocracy. Because if we were a meritocracy, Dave's argument logically concludes that Mr. Musk is certainly not pulling his own weight at any of the companies he's heading, because he's just barely going over half time per, right?
if
Yeah, so even if it's a straight meritocracy, maybe we only pay him half what a normal CEO would make for each. And even better would be to do what we would do to one of our salaried professionals, is we would threaten them with termination for severe underperformance of the job.
my wife needs her job, so I'm not going to name the company, but I will say we went to her 5-year, 10-year, whatever it was, congratulations party, and I look up the CEO of the company, and he was making, let's just say, $300,000, right? And I was like, man, all right. And within the 5 years that she was there, so it was 5 years, yep. So within the 5 years, he was making $720,000 a year. And I said,
Wow, double the pay.
right. I said,
Better than
Courtney,
double.
I said, all right, you started out at, and let's just throw out stupid numbers. You started out at $20 an hour. 5 years has gone by. How much are you making? And she's like, well, I make $21.75. So let me get this right. How is that fair? How is that possible? Like, do you think he worked any more than you did? Like, how did his pay double and somehow yours went up 2%, right? I mean, really, it's, or 10%. How did his go 100% and yours go 2% or 10%, excuse me, $2. So,
Yeah,
you look at that, and that happens so often, so much, to where it's, you wonder you wonder why, these people are hating CEOs.
Well, and now you if you didn't get a 10% pay raise last year, which most people didn't. A lot of people got a 4% or 3%, but not
If any.
10%, if any.
Well,
So if you didn't get a 10% pay raise last year, you are functionally poorer now than you were last year,
that's correct.
right? And that's going to be the case. So in the case of the CEO here, not only is your wife is still, well, she's functionally, she didn't get a raise, right? She's neutral, more or less, where she
Yep.
would have been when she got hired.
Well,
Inflation,
inflation
but
was
this-
6.5,
Yeah.
right?
But the CEO, I mean, boy, he's done a lot better than inflation, hasn't he?
Right. It's
I
funny how
mean,
that works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did good on that one. It's publicly traded companies are different than privately held, and I think in Fortune 500 companies, the statistic is quite amazing. I think it's like the average CEO, his salary it equals he's earned as much during the year off his salary as the average employee. I think after like the second week of the year, or
geez.
midway through the second work week of the year, right? So his average employee works to the end of the year, and this guy's made that much money after Wednesday of the second week. It's quite
Wow.
amazing.
I was saying that's just crazy to think about. I was watching one. It was Jay Leno. He was on the. Did I send that to
Share
you?
that with me.
Right. He's like, look, I'm making $30 million. And he goes, all right. The company, NBC, whoever he was on, was like, hey, we need to lay off half the people. We can't afford this. And he's like, what? And he goes, all right, who here thinks I should take a 50% pay cut and make 15 million? And he goes, damn, I got outvoted real quick. And he goes, so, I take a huge pay cut. And he goes, tell you what, I was so happy when the people came up to me and they're like, hey, look at my new house I bought. Look at the car I'm driving. I'm very happy. And he goes, hey, I'm making 15 fucking million. He goes, I literally can't spend it. He goes, I have the car. And we know that Jay Leno spends money. I mean, I've seen the cars that he has. He's got dual polys on the back.
Well, and he had said that, the attitude of everybody
Changed.
when he did that.
Yep.
He could just see everybody was just happier at work, and they actually cared more about being there because, again, he invested in them.
Right.
He put his money where his mouth was, and he said, you know what, you're my employees, you're important to me. If you think I should take a 50% pay cut to keep all of you on, say so.
Right.
And they all said, yeah, you should do that. And he went, all right.
Deal.
Yeah, there's not a lot of places to do that. I read, I think as the Detroit Free Press, I read an absolutely amazing. I had to stop. Did I just read that? Editorial. So the company that owns the Detroit Free Press,
Sure.
I can't remember the name. of the
Wait,
company,
who?
but What's that?
No, it was sorry. Didn't
Well,
I thought Elon Musk bought like the New York Times or something like that, or he
not-
bought-
Bezos bought the Washington
No,
Post.
there you
So
go.
the company that owns the Detroit Free
Detroit,
Press,
yeah.
they're a big national media conglomerate. I can't remember the name of them, but anyways, they that pretty sure it was that paper I was reading the other day, and the now former vice president of the company in his op-ed said, well, my boss told me that I was going to have to fire this many people basically to save his salary. I said, I'm not going to do it. So I'm resigning.
Yeah.
Done. And basically put in the op-ed that he was calling what will soon be his former boss out to say, and this money ain't going to you. It goes to them. I thought, wow, that's really powerful. I mean, the guy must have been towards the end of his career and figured this was an interesting way to bow out. Kudos to him, I guess, but I gotta imagine that's the rarity, but it gets to the point of how big of a social issue this is. And I suspect it wouldn't, I know, this is why the debt ceiling right now, seems to take on a different kind of tone of discussion, because every time the debt ceiling comes up, it seems that the issue of inequality is like peeking around the corner, because inequality in at the every Jane and Joe level, a lot of people see the debt involved in that. And so that word pops in their mind, and they look at this and they think, oh my God, it's really something that how the political dynamics change the, the context of what actually is a discussion that strictly subject matter wise we've had many times.
Well, and
That's-
I'd love to go back and reiterate what you said earlier. Right. I mean, the debt ceiling in theory, the federal government is nothing about politics, right? It is strictly a financial, it's a financial thing. And so, but like, there's so much going into a political stance of this, right? I mean, we all wish that this wasn't a thing. Like, we wish that the financial gurus of the world would actually just take over and be the financial person. Granted, we'd all live on rice and beans and rice. Oh, excuse me. Ain't that right, Dave Ramsey? Until we're out of debt. But like there has to be this happy medium where we have these people not being able to hold this power to be able to sign things. And I'm glad that you brought up the coin where they're allowed to mint, and it's the amount of money. And that was one of the greatest things, or it's not one of the greatest things. It is one of the most powerful things that we're allowed to do to save our own ass. Because guess what? We as a nation can pay our debts. Granted, we are in debt up to trillions, and people will say, hey, you can't. No, like, in theory, if we had to sell off the US, this is how much we're worth in a sense, and we'll still make some money. Everybody will get $1 in their pocket. If you leave this world with $1 in your pocket, you're better than most of the world. So you've made money on your investment. It's not FU money that people think. So I'd like to be clear about that, where, when you look at it, they did that, right? They held us and said, hey, you can't sit here and tell me that I can't pay my debt. I'm going to step in. We're not going to step in until the last minute. But I hope that somebody just trumps it. Granted, we talked about, you weren't on here for that. We started our episode with, we started our bitching episode, Brett Kavanaugh. We really hope that he gets kicked off. Hopefully, let's make it happen. But if that happens, right, things will change so much more. We're hoping for the better of the people.
So I want to
yeah, I wasn't on that episode. I highly doubt it happens. He'd have to either quit or be impeached. He could be removed, but the Senate impeachment process is almost identical and to the president, including the fact to take 2/3 to boot him off, which wouldn't happen. So I don't know. I think that it's unfortunate, but yeah, we'll see.
I want to call back to CEO pay.
Sure.
Because I love numbers. In 1965, CEOs made 21-1 over what the average worker made at the company. In 1989, which was the first year of the first Bush presidency, it tripled, 61-1.
Wow, really? 60
From 1978 to 2020, it grew 1.322%
every year.
No, from one to the other.
Okay. Huh. Wow.
Top 1% earnings growth, which was 341% between 1978 and 2019.
Yep. And the economist Paul Krugman, and I guess this will be my closing point for the evening because I got to run, but the economist Paul Krugman, who taught at Princeton and what's the one in New York, Columbia, and then he's also written for the New York Times for a long time. He won a Nobel Prize in economics. Actually, it had nothing to do with that. It was about imports and exports, I think. But anyways, or free trade. He always says that what you're talking about, Dave, right there. He says, Paul Krugman says, that is it. That is why the United States has had such a change economically, is because that huge gap in pay within companies, and the fact that boards of directors of corporations approve it that CEOs expect it, that the culture expects it, and that shareholders look at that is okay as long as they get to use companies as piggy banks. They don't always look at them as the type of investment anymore that we talked about at the beginning here, when I came on anyways, that he says this has all led to corporations being structured just to make a few really top level executives rich and the largest shareholders, nobody else matters. And he says that's not how business used to be conducted in this country. He says the tax structure used to incentivize against that, and it doesn't anymore.
Well,
And
and
when
I
the-
want to
Yeah.
make a correction, not to interrupt David here for
Go
a minute,
ahead.
but
Go ahead.
because I can't see, I said 1.322,
Mhm.
1,322%
Yeah,
Oh,
over
Okay.
over that time. So
over that
that's-
time. And we're average workers, 18% increase.
sure.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
insane.
It's what, 200 times as much or something like increase. That's crazy.
Yeah, 70, so almost 74 times
Yeah.
what workers
Yeah.
did.
And Dave, that's so Paul Krugman,
Mhm.
the book he wrote called The Great Divergence. It's exactly what it's about.
Mhm.
And he says between 1930 and 1970, he had what he called the Great Convergence. The big, super huge high fortunes went away. And then after the war, the really desperate poor went away. And the country had a middle class. And he says part of the reason for that is because wages went up high after the war because unions negotiated it. And the tax structure was set up in a way that disincentivized corporations from paying CEOs that type of salary, because the CEO would be disincentivized for taking it, partially because if he made too much money, yes, he was taxed very high on it. So Krugman says this all changed in the 80s,
Mhm.
and surprise, surprise, it correlates very neatly with the gap in rich and poor, the decrease in average people's wages that no longer keeps up with inflation. And Krugman says that the inflation in the 70s, as bad as it was really that was it for American wage growth. After that, no more. And the numbers prove it. And I remember years ago, and I'm going to part ways with you soon, but I remember years ago having a conversation in one of the grocery stores I worked at with a person who had worked there for a long time. And I did some math because we were talking about wages, what we made, and how he had worked there a long time, and told me all about what he got hired in at, what he made now. And, I'm like 16 or 17, and even I can do some quick little high school math in my head. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, like that guy's never actually really had a raise. And he's worked here for like 20 years. Oh my
Yeah.
God, this would be horrible.
Yeah.
And that was like an aha moment for me. So-
And just proving that point. So when I started at Gentex, there was a big issue that happened. So I got hired in temporary, $10 an hour, got hired in for $11 an hour, got my promotion within the first couple of weeks back into the warehouse, level D, at $13.55 or something, $13.50 an hour. So I'm sitting in a break room, and guys that have been there for 7 years, they're like, "Oh man, what do you make?" or whatever, and blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, I got $13.50." Dude gets pissed. He's been there 7 years, and he's come to find out he only makes $13.45 an hour.
Mhm.
He's been there 7 years. And so he went and bitched, started this huge thing throughout all of Gentex. Actually, they went and paid back everybody 5 cents an hour for, who knows, it wasn't very long, but like guys walked away with like a $200 check or whatever, because they made them up to where I was making, because, hey, that's the new higher end thing.
Good.
Because people aren't doing that. I say, before you go, I say, do you have much more that you want to hit on?
I probably got another 5 or 10 minutes, maybe.
To say, but we want to go back to the 30% that the Republicans are trying to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
this spending. Average household spends on average 61,334, which turns out if you add 30%, that's $18,000 in taxes a year. That's the difference between the rich people being able to afford it and the poor people, because you're still going to spend that average.
Mhm.
I now have 18,000 above.
I'm not poor. I can't afford that.
No, like,
And I don't know many people that can.
right. I mean,
That's right now when the prices are skyrocketing because of inflation, that's actually a recipe for economic disaster. If you
My-
pass that law and did it
Yeah.
right after you defaulted on the nation's debt,
oh yeah.
I mean, you talk about incompetence. I mean, you would not want to see that. That's the type of thing that happened in Argentina in the
That's-
early part of the last century, and Argentina has
Never
recovered from
Yep.
it.
That's
100 years ago, and it has never recovered from it. So, guys,
Yeah.
I got to run, but
Sure.
it's been very good. So, thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
We will see you in a couple of weeks in studio
Yes.
with your brother.
I can't wait.
We
Dan
can't
and I will
either.
talk
Thank
about
you so
just as
much
fun.
for hopping on and giving us your
Okay.
wealth of knowledge.
You betcha. You guys take care, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Sounds good.
Yep. Bye bye.
But the whole point of that is middle class is going to go away, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just
Well, I mean, it really has in the last 40 years.
it's gone. Yeah, I mean, it's gone down. It hasn't gone away yet. Right?
Okay, so I know what I make.
Yep.
We combined, Dawn and I make about 115,000 a year.
Yep.
I consider us lower middle class.
So, and you'd be lower of the middle. Yes, for sure.
Mike, what do you consider yourself? I don't want you to give salary or anything, but what do you consider yourself?
I mean, I would probably consider myself at the lower part of middle class. I think if I wasn't paying child support, I'd be higher up, just
Mhm.
because, again, I mean, I did some quick math, and I mean, from what I've been at my job for, and it kind of goes with what Nick had said, you know, Courtney, in the last 5 years or whatever, her wage has increased. But like 10%, I think was what you.
Yeah, 10%, $2.
In the 25 years I have worked, from what I started to what I'm making now, again, without giving numbers, a little over 700%.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I've gone
Shit.
from making not a lot to being paid like very,
Sure.
very well, to the point again, like if it wasn't for a lot of child support, I would be very well off.
And it's funny. So
427%.
I say it's funny, but it's not.
428%.
Wow. It's not funny. I keep saying that word, but right.
Ironic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The middle, middle class is technically described as 47,000 all the way up to 141
Mhm.
per household.
Which is insane, because it's
I would never ever think anybody at 41,000 is middle class.
141,000.
No, this is
But-
47. Sorry, 47.
Okay,
At
47.
47. I would never.
No, they're lower class.
right. Like, and
They're
we
the
also
working
had the
poor.
one that we counted out, that if you looked at what they consider poverty in the United States for
stupid,
just
like
a single person,
18,000 or something like that.
yeah,
Something like
that's
that.
14.
when you average it out, it's below minimum wage.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
means-
taxes will take you out of it. So, I think that what we're getting at is, the idea that, okay, so that's the thing that bothered me. In order to pass things, you have to put other things in there to get your stuff passed. Like,
Yeah.
I want to vote on everything specifically, individually. And you know what? If you're working in Congress and you're doing all these things, you're voting all day, right? You get a sheet. This is what we're voting on today. It's 55 things. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. If we have a middle, we throw it off to the next thing. We set Fridays for our negotiations of what didn't approve and what got, what didn't get approved. But literally,
Unfortunately, that's not what happens. They vote
it's
on
not,
like five
but things need to change for that, right?
Well, and Mike, you're hitting on it right now. That's not what happens, because there's really no money in it for them. And we're at a point where politicians, Republicans and Democrats, really overwhelmingly are looking out for whatever is in their household's best interest, not necessarily what's in their constituents' best interest.
and not even always just household. It's household and who's ever their primary funders.
Yes.
That's what they worry about. And I would agree with you. It's both parts.
And
But
what
just at least from the perspective of the Democrats, at least in most of those cases, it's areas that have kind of social justice and things like that as kind of a core building.
Yeah, you're much more likely to have Democrats actually caring about what's happening to people.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get that from the other side.
No.
They're worried about what's happening to the church or the religious people or
And I think
businesses.
the professor said it right before he left. He said, if we default on our loan and we pass this huge, income tax thing, it's going to put, and I mean, he brought up Argentina. I mean, one of the things that happened with Argentina in recovering from that was a period of dictatorship.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's that certain group of people in our country that would not mind this being a dictatorship.
What would you put that percentage at in your mind?
I'd say it's at least 15%.
I'd say it's high. I'd probably put it at 30 to 35.
And that could very well be.
I would say, Nick, what we're saying right now is the percentage of people in this country that would like to see us as a dictatorship. And I'm thinking 30 to 35%, honestly.
And it's probably that high.
I guess
It's
thinking
only
about it,
half of
I never really
those.
thought about it. But right, I mean, I probably agree with you. Like, yeah. Like,
Well,
I mean,
how many
it's probably that high, but only about half of them are willing to
actually
openly
know what the
talk
hell they're talking
it.
about. What's that?
Well, to actually talk about
Yeah.
Yes.
because those are those people you mentioned. Those are those extremely, Trumpy people who
Yes.
are.
That's the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys.
Yep.
Those types of factions that are sitting
Yep.
there saying those things. Again, the number of women that came out in 2020 and said, I'll give up women's right to vote if that means Trump will stay president for my lifetime. Okay, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Because
that's
there's
just-
no politician I would give up my right to vote for. None. I don't give a fuck who they are.
Zip zero zilch nada.
Yeah.
Nope.
I
I
would do
don't
it
give a
for
shit who
Hendy.
they are.
I would do it for Hendy.
I might do it for Hendy.
I say,
don't think you
still
would.
wouldn't even do that. Well, I'm granted at his age.
He's
Yeah,
70.
I mean, I probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
is he only 70?
hopefully he's got another 15, 20 good years.
But oh, let's say.
Let's go on a tangent.
All right, yeah, because I had another tangent, but go on.
Hendy called me the other day
Good.
and he got good news on his heart finally.
I'm awesome.
His medication is working.
Good.
Ice.
He still doesn't feel any better, but his heart's working the way it should.
Oh yeah.
And he's gaining weight, which he's pissed off about.
I just went and used the restroom. I excused myself from the podcast for
Yes.
20 seconds. You guys have a new sign on the door.
We do.
I don't know. It's like it's got a man, a woman. I seen the fucking alien,
Yeah.
Bigfoot, a witch. I wish I could describe to you people
I
what
mean,
this thing
hey,
had.
it's a gender neutral.
Right. So we're out
Doesn't
to
matter
bre-
what you identify as, you could use that bathroom.
we're out to breakfast real quick, and we're the place has two restrooms, and they just have the man woman stall. Like,
Yeah.
Hey, both. There's no piss or any urinal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's no urinal in either, right? It's just a toilet.
Yeah.
And lady comes back or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, they're male, female." She goes, "I don't." Or she goes, "I'm not gender neutral or whatever." And so like it just I'm in a fighting mood. I want people to know this.
Yeah, same.
And so she walks behind my wife, and I was like, "You don't want to say goodbye, sir?" And she's like, "What?" And I was like, tell him goodbye." She's like, "What?" And she goes, "Oh, that." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, be like, "Hey, sorry. I just thought I would identify you as a dude because you know what? You sitting here talking your mouth off."
Oh.
And I was like, I'm ready to start a fight.
But
here,
I do have to ask, is there a Sasquatch on there?
on the one here, yes.
might be.
It's the last
okay,
one.
because I identify as a Sasquatch.
Yeah, it was the last one, which I thought was hilarious.
There's a reason she bought that. Because in one of the reviews we got, it was said that they complained about the fact that the answer on the bathroom is the only one we have.
Yes.
And then we were called discriminatory for that answer. So Dawn wanted to make sure there's no way we could be discriminatory because obviously the man woman on there wasn't clear enough.
Yeah.
So now everything is on there. So we're not discriminating against anything.
It was
Just stupid people.
anything.
Right.
So,
Just stupid
like-
people.
Like I swear to God, if I see an ant in there, I'm backing out. I'm gonna be like, "Nope, sorry, you must be using." Like,
Yeah.
guys, all right. So I know this is a fun tangent for me. 4, 8, 12. There's probably 16 different characters on this thing, and it's just.
I don't think I've seen it. I don't think I've been here.
You
since
haven't. It
last
just
time.
got hung up this weekend.
So I
I'll
thought
probably
it
be
was.
up this weekend, so I'll probably see it.
Yeah. By the way, we'd like you to work Saturday if you can.
All right, I'll be here. Yeah.
So my favorite TikTok ever got taken down.
Oh man, dude, honestly, the amount of things you send me that by the time I get to them, it's like this video is unavailable.
There are a lot of that, but
So
this is
many.
what I did.
Oh,
Because
Oh,
I stitched some stupid young blonde bitch. I don't care that she's blonde, but she's stupid. Going, how am I going to teach my children about these gender bathroom things? And all I said, you're going to call it a bathroom, you fucking potato.
yeah, I say.
Because again, it's just a fucking bathroom. You know what? Who takes the leak in my bathroom? Anybody that's at my house. I don't give a fuck what they are.
Right.
They can have a vagina, they can have a dick, they can pee out of their fucking nose. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
The bathroom's there, use it.
Right. Say just make sure you hit the
Yeah.
hit the
But it-
water.
you guys-
Make sure it's in the water, not all over.
during
I'm
your
sending a
venting
picture.
of your airing of grievances part of the episode,
Yes.
It's
when Nick,
wild
you were
role.
making the comment about, you don't feel like you can like say what you want to say because you're really frustrated about things. Why can't you? Because 25% of the population is doing it right now anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, true.
Why
I
not
don't-
just
I
go to
don't-
people and say, I don't want to do that for you because you're an idiot.
No, and it's because the way you just said that is a more respectful way than I would ever say anything in the
Yes.
ways that I would like. That's why I can't, right? Because it's taken me years. People don't understand like how much I've grown up. I didn't realize I was a child. Okay. People would be like, hey, you're acting like a child, and I'd tell them himself.
Yeah.
And then, later I'd be like, well, I probably could have just been like, I'm glad you had that opinion. And right, like you can answer things without telling people to go after themselves. I didn't learn that for long. But anyway, so back to this quick topic.
It's the far
And
left
then
one at the bottom and ninja.
we can hop off. But so I want to I want to talk about how this impacts Democrats, this impacts Republicans. Okay. This impacts liberals, this impacts
Conservatives.
everything. Okay. So this debt ceiling thing is a bigger factor than people. I mean, it's bigger than I can comprehend.
Yes.
I only comprehend it when I live through it, right? So just like a recession, you don't if you're the brightest person, you sell right before the recession. The highest point that there possibly is, you sell right then. If you do, you're the lucky guy because you didn't see it coming, right? Like now you see things and you have two choices: you ride it out, or you right. I mean, or you ride it out or sell everything at the low, and then you're dumb.
Well, that's a good point. So my mother calls me this morning.
Mhm.
Ring, ring.
Ring ring. Get this text. Ring ring.
She goes, yeah, Scott said we're in a recession. Scott's her financial advisor.
Yep.
Because there was too much money for me to want to screw with. He says we're in a recession already. What do you think?
If you listen to my podcast, the answer was yes.
I said, well, I would have to look at the numbers because technically a recession is 2 straight quarters of a negative GDP.
And
I said, we were in a recession last year in the first and second quarter. I don't know what the third and fourth look like. And of course, we don't know what the fourth looks like yet because it hasn't
it
come out.
hasn't come out right.
So I look at the third quarter.
Mhm.
GDP was positive
It
3.5%.
was up, yes.
So are we in a recession right now?
The answer is
No.
no. Like in legal terms,
Yeah.
the answer is no. The answer is no. Is fourth quarter looking like shit? Yes. Is the first quarter starting out? I mean, I would guarantee no matter what happens with this vote, we are going to be in a legal recession officially. And we can't guarantee anything, but I will say these are my strong opinions and feelings.
Well, and the question is, how bad will it be? If
Correct.
they push this to the limit or past,
that was one of the things.
this will be
Past we're fucked.
the worst recession since the depression in the 1920s and
That is
30s.
absolutely
It
correct.
will be the worst economic disaster we will have seen. 2008 will be a distant memory.
I'll still come onto the podcast, but I will not tell you how successful I am in my business, right?
Correct.
It will be completely, and you guys will understand. Hey, I worked my ass off to get nowhere. Like that's literally what's going to happen. So June will be the point. I mean, I have the opportunity to sell, but like, and honestly, if we don't hit it by June, I probably will sell most of my portfolio.
Because you'll have to.
Education wise, I'll have to. Right.
Well, it's also not going to be worth in
Anything.
September what it's worth right now.
But it won't be for years.
Correct.
Okay. Not
You're
just,
not going to turn it around in 6 to 8 months. You're going to turn it around in 10 to 15 years.
it'll be,
This will be
it'll
the
be
second coming of the Great Depression.
correct.
Yes.
It'll be more like 8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And at this moment, I have too many loans where 8 years won't be enough. I could probably sell half my portfolio.
Well, and how did we get out of the Great Depression?
We pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps and fucking went to work. That's what the fuck we did. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah, but the government
Pushball.
shoved a lot of money into
That's exactly
reopening
what it is.
businesses or starting
Tax-
new businesses.
Tax
like-
breaks.
Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal.
That's the New Deal was huge.
I mean, Roosevelt knew how to get us out of that depression. He wasn't the president when it started.
Right.
But he was the one that got us out, which is why he did what no other president has ever done and could do.
Yep.
He won 3 terms.
He went 4 terms.
Did he win 4?
He had just gotten inaugurated not long before he died, or on his 4th term. He officially got elected 4 times.
Quick math.
Yep.
120 months is how many years?
10.
10.
The Great Depression lasted 120 months.
Yep. So
10 years.
and this one, because of how stupid we are, it might last longer.
It might last longer.
Like,
Yeah.
You know what? But my feel, we'll do a whole nother episode on that. Actually, we'll just do 15-minute episodes, and we should start doing just some where we have basic ideas to stay on track. We're gonna start doing kids episodes for adults. But you know, I will say that if you're living a normal life and you can pay your bills, okay. So there's so many things that Mr. Siwik had hit on that I wanted to dive so much deeper into. I would absolutely love to pick his brain. But right, especially on this one, because he's a historian. So you know, we talked about wages for a little bit in this episode. Okay. Detroit, all of the nurses walked out.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't, hey, you loved me during the pandemic and now you're treating me like absolute shit.
New York also.
Was it New York?
It was New York.
Yeah.
I don't know if Detroit, but New
I
York.
was gonna say, it was one of the two.
It was New York.
Yeah. Okay. And that was right. Like, here we go. And this, what did I say on the podcast? Do you want to know you want him to fix it? Fucking stop. Like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying I'm right. All I'm saying is I'm right.
Well, you know, and Mr. Siwik brought up a great point on where unions went.
Very much.
Who was the first?
Funniest fucking thing. You know, I'm not a union guy, chief.
Okay, Farva. Who was the first president that really had a hand in breaking unions?
No idea.
It was Reagan
Was it?
with the air traffic controllers.
Oh, nice.
It was. He was
Huh.
the first one, and he started breaking unions as much as possible because that's what his corporate overlords wanted.
So here's the thing, okay? My favorite is anti-union people, which is me.
Mhm.
But when I am in my construction things and the construction guys that bash the union people, oh, overpaid, whatever. Nope. Somebody's willing to pay it. You're just too stupid to be able to charge it. And you can't market the way that these people do.
Correct.
So way to go, dumbass. Like, in theory, the union, and here's how my brain looks at it. The union should be the lowest paid,
Okay.
right? If everything goes well, right?
Yeah.
Well, they should be, I can't call it the average, but like, I mean, yes, in theory, they should be the average, right? But because there should be so many people that can self-earn above what somebody else can quote for you. Because
Yes.
hey, you know what? We'll get you $40. Well, if you can get me $40, I can get me 60, motherfucker. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be an asshole. And then there's the people who, hey, again, you're dumb enough to work for less. I'll pay you, but you'll have a little better lifestyle. You have to pay union dues, and that's what everybody's worried about is fucking union. Up yours. Say, but so like the way I guess they should be lower to average kind of a thing, because the company should be outdoing them and they should be doing this. And if the union gets more jobs, guess what? They're going to pay more. That's the whole point of it, because they're out there marketing, they're out there doing it. Hey, you want this union, guys? So unions are great. They definitely help the economy get to things, because hey, this is all we'll do. This is what we're going to do. This is the price we're going to do it at. And we see Starbucks trying to unionize. We see things trying to get there.
Why do we have a 40-hour work week?
Unions?
Why do we have a 5-day work week?
Unions?
Why do we get time off?
Unions?
If we didn't have those, there'd be child labor. There'd be
7 days a week.
7 days a week, 15, 20-hour days.
It'd be at least 10s to 12s, right? I don't know if it'd be 15 to whatever, but like
a work-life balance wouldn't even be a topic of discussion now in today's society.
So, and it's funny because probably out of all, like, I'm the most anti-union guy here, because they've dropped so much into what they change into being money hungry, greedy bastards, in my opinion, and they lost the fight for the actual person. Okay. I love
like politicians.
Exactly. I love
because I got to the point of the people who were overseeing the unions, it was all about getting their due and things like that.
Getting their votes, getting their everything. President of the union.
Where's Jimmy Hoffa?
He's actually in the river.
Under the Meadowlands.
I think so. But right.
He's my grandpa. I saw him just last week.
And it might take that to get back, right?
Yeah.
And I really it's funny. Okay, so here's the thing. So my brother's an electrician. I don't want to say where, doesn't matter.
Is he in the Brotherhood?
No.
Yeah.
Funny thing, right? 2 of his really good friends, definitely in it. Working on, I'll just say it, they're working at Michigan State.
Yeah.
Right? Fuck, dude, you got to come here. I'm making $43 an hour. I like what I have. My brother's that guy. Yeah, they give me a company van. I got this, like $23 an hour. My brother thinks he's doing really well. He is doing really well for what he comes from in the spec.
Right.
But these guys are like, man, 40 something bucks an hour. I like what I got. There's always somebody that's willing to take less, right?
Yeah, there is.
And there's companies that'll profit from you for doing it. So Blue Cross Blue Shield is a union for some of their stuff, which is crazy. I have a friend that's a union rep for that. And I didn't realize it. So well, in healthcare.
I know my answer for this.
Sure.
So I'm gonna ask you first. At Gentex, were you fairly compensated what you feel you were worth?
Never. But at the end, yes.
So you got what you felt you were worth.
At the end, well, before
Not the very end.
right. I felt I was making a fair wage
For what you
the
did.
work I was doing.
Okay. At your last job, did you feel you got what you were
Not
worth?
a chance.
Ask me.
Do you feel
Not a fucking chance. No fucking way. I am very underpaid.
in softball
Beyond underpaid.
in your last job?
Before my current job,
Yep.
20 some odd years ago,
Sure.
vastly underpaid.
Okay. What about before you went on salary with this company?
I probably was getting compensated fairly before I went salary.
It's wrong. You were compensated the exact same. They just took your extra from you.
Correct.
So, right. The difference is you felt you were making more
I
money.
felt like I felt fairly compensated because I had the ability to make what I felt I was worth.
That's exactly correct. And like, that's why with Gentex. So to answer my question, no, but I mean, if I worked 50 hours, I was living a fucking lavish lifestyle for something I come from, right?
Correct.
Everybody else would be like, oh, like the higher ups are like, what's up, poor person? And I'm like, what's up, bro? Like, it's a matter of what you limit yourself. I was at a meetup, I don't care, a couple weeks ago, The night we went really long.
Yeah.
The day before I was at another long event the guy goes out. All right, I'm hiring somebody for 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, 200,000. I'm hiring and 250,000. Yep, I'll take it. Whatever it is, got it. He goes, look, you just limited yourself to how much you're willing to make. You put a price on how much you're worth. And if you don't change that mindset, and you won't learn to reach for how my brain thinks. 250? I don't think that. $1 billion. Once I get to $1 billion, there's a trillion. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it's not that it's not enough. It's that my limitations are out there and I want to go achieve every little bit that I can.
I want to ask Mike the same question. Mike, are you fairly compensated?
To say, I mean, it's kind of one of these things. But would I happily make more money? Of course. Do I feel for what I do where I'm compensated decently? I'm like, yes. Could I go and do a very similar job somewhere else, probably get paid more money? Yes, but would I deal with the fact of not necessarily knowing, do I have the same flexibility? Does the company care about its employees the way I feel my company cares about its employees? No. So, you know, I really don't have, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'd like to get paid more. I mean, you're dumb to sit there and say, no, I don't want to get paid any more money. You've, you know, not paying me anything more, you know.
And mine just looked really weird. I really, at Gentex, I hit the mother load on perfect timing. Okay. I told you the guys made less than me, right? For whatever. Gentex like had an epiphany when I started, in the sense of like, man, I was starting out higher. I did whatever. You know, and then all of a sudden, like the raise after that, they're like, hey, we took our raise cap off, which was bullshit. But like, instead of making 30-cent max, you were allowed to make like 75 cents. And my boss was a decent boss. So I was making, and then you're getting them every 6 months instead of a year. So here I'm making $1.50 roughly extra a year. Within my 5-year period, they were like, hey, you know what? We're making 23% bonuses, 20 something, like we're making great Hey guys, we've hit this for the past X amount of years. We're going to give you 5% pay increases just right off the top. Boom. So 5% of what I was making was really good. And then I'm still getting 19% bonuses, right? Like we still hit good numbers for a long period of time. You know, and then at the end, COVID, that changed everything, right? And now that I still talk to a few of my friends. They're back to the like 25, 30 cents a year raises. They've stopped things, like they're getting their bonuses are starting to climb back up. They're starting to grow as company. So but really during my time, I hit my raises very well. I hit everything very, very well. So
well, before we sign off for this one, I'm gonna preface this by saying this. I work very hard at my job.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
My job is a very mental job.
It sucks.
It is not a physically demanding job. So I mean, I could do this until I'm 65 if I wanted to, because as long as my mind stays sharp, I can do my job. Mike, would you basically say the same thing about your job?
My job is exactly like yours in that way. It is 100%, maybe 99% mental, 1% physical, in the fact that I do have to climb stairs.
So when you look
Is
at
your office upstairs?
Yes.
Lazy.
And I don't take the elevator.
Good for you.
So when we look at, let's say, me, you, and Mikey.
Yeah.
Who works hardest?
I mean, Mikey physically works the hardest.
Do you think he's fairly compensated for what he does?
Not a chance.
No. He's going to kill himself and they're just going to replace him.
At what age do you think he'll retire?
Never.
I mean, he'll retire when his body tells him he can't work anymore.
No,
Or
but
when he drops dead?
Or when he drops dead.
That's the thing, is like he's not investing, he's not doing anything. He
can never afford to
his
retire.
body would let him work that job until he was 80. He would be working until he's 80.
You know, it's ironic. I met a guy looks at me and he's like, man, what's your name? And I told him Nick. And he's like, what's your last? I was like, my brother works over at this Meyer. Guy works for Servview Success. He actually works. So we'll call it Mikey's job. And he goes, "This is my second job." I forget what he does for a full time. So he's working like 2 full-time jobs, or and I was like, damn. And he all of a sudden he looks at me, he's like, I told him my last name or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, my wife gave you a massage." And I was like, "Sir, I've had 3 massages in my life, and I think you're thinking of some." And he goes, "No, over at this chiropractic office." And I was like, and you ever like see people and not understand that 2 people would be together? Like
You never would have guessed it.
not in a fucking million years kind of a thing. But I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." But he's like, "I'm supporting until she gets her stuff going up," and it's great. But it was just it was really weird to me. So
If it was like, if I were in a situation that where I didn't have kids, none of the things I wanted to do like regularly outside of work, there's a pretty good chance I'd have another real committed part-time job where I worked like 20 hours a week just to keep myself busy. But again, with the long-term goal of
I'm
retiring by
looking,
I'm 60, and I get a lot of people at work who are like, why? And I'm like, I'm not even talking full retirement. I'm talking more like a semi-retirement.
Do what you want to do.
and I'm
If
looking,
I
I'm
feel
looking for a
comfortable with the
part-time.
fact that I couldn't get my house fully paid off and all this other stuff to the point where if I'm making half of what I'm making now, or even maybe a third of what I'm making now, it'd feel like I can make ends meet until it's time to retire, I would do it.
Yeah, no, trust me, I'm looking for kind of the same thing just because I want to get back to my investments because I just want the end of my life to be so much better, right? My life's fine, but we have the potential the next 8 years are going to suck, right? 10 years. And the 10 years, and the 10 years is the most important years to me right now, right? Because that's my daughter is, but so I'm emotionally drained right now because I want to go back to work in the sense of I want to make sure that financially we're no problems. In the end, I'd love to make sure that that's a guarantee. Because I'm not at the guarantee. I mean, I'm not at the guarantee. I still owe on my properties. People should know this. Nothing's a guarantee. And then there's also the part of I want to be there for my kid. Granted, I'm doing this and I'm doing other stuff, and so I'm actually gone quite a bit, sometimes more than I care. But
well, I kind of want to preface this.
Yeah.
If the economy crashes tomorrow, and we're in a recession worse than 2008, you're worth less than everyone because your money is tied up in properties.
I mean, I probably have a bigger bank account than most people.
You probably do, but the amount of losses you're taking.
Oh, I'm fucking done.
Like, you're destroyed.
So the problem is okay. So just like when I was day trading, I have a what do they call it? A stop, right? I have a stop loss set into place. So just to throw it out there, I owe $70,000 on my primary house. Actually, I think it's like $68,000. So I will drain myself to my number is $70,000 in one bank account. Okay. So I will literally give everything to try to make my properties last to that point to make sure I keep my promissory. But at 70,000, once I get to that, I officially will start defaulting on loans. Sucks to say. But I will instantly just go pay my house off. I will make sure that my family has the house paid off. My wife can pay, but really everything else will be defaulted. I will have zero, officially be worth a net worth of nothing in my house. But like that's how my plan is currently. I mean, I'm trying to pay my house down, but like I don't think no matter what happens, no matter how low, because no matter how low it gets, I probably always keep 70 as my stop. My stop loss, because that way I have 1 year's worth of, because let's say I owe 68, I have 1 year's worth of taxes to guarantee that I have that money in the bank. So,
well, I'm also going to say, if my job gave me a $25,000 raise right now, I'm still not fairly compensated. I'm never satisfied with anything.
Never should be.
Well, and I think that's part of the point too. It's not that I think I'm worth $150,000 a year, but I know my worth is greater than what they're giving me. Now, could I produce more work? Yeah, give me other stuff to do. I could produce way more, but
compensate me for it.
Yeah, I'm given this task, and from March to December, I'm a fucking rock star. I suck in January and February because that's when everybody renews, is January. So I play catch up for 8 weeks trying to get shit done. And, Dawn asked me today, she goes, well, could you start some of this sooner? Everything I can start sooner, I do.
Yeah.
But I can't order stuff before the first of the year. And at that point, we're talking, I got to move 1 million pegs through a tiny little fucking hole.
Yep. And
It's just impossible.
Yep. And really,
You can't start it until you have the specs.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, all right, guys, I hope you learned a bunch from this episode, because I really, it's a weird topic that's not normal for us. I really enjoyed the episode. As always, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your family. All right, so the mountain bogs, we'll call it that. I had the batshit crazy.
I did like that.
Yeah, so I don't drink coffee, but it tasted like, somebody put creamer in coffee kind of a thing. Apple lager. It was okay. My problem, and I'll just be honest about it. My problem is I poured it after my batshit crazy, which is a coffee, whatever. And so I kept getting kind of notes of that in my apple. So I'd have a very strong apple, but it wasn't a fair assessment of what I drank.
I did like the apple quite a bit.
Yes. And because you drank it straight out of the can. A Wild Trip ale actually was the last thing. I'm enjoying it still. Very, very nice beer. So Mob Craft, honestly, they're doing very well. They're doing great for me. I'm enjoying the fun different flavors that they have.
I enjoyed my water.
Yeah.
I will say that anybody that watched us tonight on Twitch, if they listen back, we are going to post this episode before we post Free Flowing Hostility.
Yep.
So that'll be posted secondary. Might be in the same week. I don't know. We'll kind of figure that out. We will not be live next week.
That's correct.
Because Nick will be on vacation. I did have a guest lined up. Actually, Caitlin messaged me and goes, can we do next Tuesday? And I said, no, because Nick is out of town. So she's shooting for the following Tuesday with her friend.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes. Mike, how was your water?
It's good.
Any last thoughts for the people out there?
I think I'm good. Just, realize that this is going to impact you a lot more than you might think.
Yep. We'll talk to you guys very, very soon.
Yep. Thanks for joining.
Any tips and topics that you guys want, let us know.
Yeah, please. We love your feedback.
You've dialed in to Bucks and Brews. You might hear something you can use, like tips on your cash or tips on the suds. You're gonna want to use the smarts of these stuff, cause they know the brews, and they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks. So listen up, cause shit's not funny, and save yourself some beer money. Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
Brews.
and Brews.
Bucks and Brews.